Hello, and welcome to the Wade Borth Podcast. I'm your host, Wade Borth, and in every episode, my goal is to get you to think differently about how money works and ultimately to empower you to take control of your money and your personal financing system. Hello, and welcome to the Wade Borth Podcast. Today, I have a special treat for you today. I have David Richter, who's the owner of Simple CFO, and Michael Hansen, who is the senior CFO, is a CFO advisor for Simple CFO and also the CFO for David Richter's organization. And both are IBC practitioners and are certified through the Nelson Nash Institute. Welcome, David, Michael.
Thanks for having.
Thanks, Wade. Appreciate it.
It's always good to have like-minded people on my podcast and share a point of view. And I have to admit that when I first heard of your organization, David, I had very little knowledge that your organization or your industry even existed. It's been a learning experience for me as well. So with that, maybe tell me a little bit about your industry and what you're in and what you guys do. And I think it's called, is it Fractional CFO?
Yeah, that's one term for it. So yeah, if you want, I'll just dive right into it.
Yeah, it'd be great.
So as far as everyone has probably heard the term CFO, and that means Chief Financial Officer. And a lot of the big companies and corporations have someone that are just there to help anything from the financial systems and processes point of view and making sure that the company is healthy and doesn't run out of money and go out of business and becomes bankrupt. But a lot of small businesses do not have someone like that on their team. Small businesses usually have bookkeepers, CPAs, accountants. They have everyone from those walks of life. And the fractional CFO does the work of a CFO, but at a fraction of the time and a fraction of the cost usually too. Meaning, like, if you were to hire a CFO for a business there, you're probably looking upwards of $150, $200, $250 and up $1,000 a year that someone would be working with a full-time CFO. And for what we do, we have multiple clients that we serve and we help a lot. Like one CFO on the team can handle between 5 and 10 businesses. So we handle quite a few businesses per the CFOs on our team. And it just helps us to help the investors and we work specifically with real estate investors who wouldn't have an opportunity to work with a CFO. If I had to do an analogy of it too, everyone has probably gone to the doctor. So if I had to do that in a hospital form, then the bookkeeper is like the nurse, comes and checks in on you, does the day-to-day type stuff, annoys you with everything that they're doing, but is there for your well-being. And then the CPA is like the specialist. They're the ones that do the tax portion, and they're the ones that's going to help you save the money specifically from the tax aspect. And then the CFO, I equate it to the doctor, where they're going to help overall. Like, this is the business and the strategies in order to make sure you're healthy, to make sure you can get up and running, to make sure you can really get to where you want to be. Because a lot of people come to us very sick, and their books are sick and their numbers are sick, their cash flow is sick. And the doctor really needs to dive in deep to figure out what the root cause is, because sometimes it's not the actual money issue, it's a behavioral issue, or it could be like an actual symptom. The money is just the symptom of what's really going on inside the business. And that's what the CFO is there to be, a strategist to uncover that. And then the fractional CFO just does that, like I said, for multiple clients, and they're not a full-time CFO on the team. We do everything virtually too with our company that we service real estate investors.
Oh, it's interesting. Up until the point where we met, or maybe Michael, you and I had talking about it a while back, I just never realized that there's companies that just served in a really, for lack of a better word, a part-time capacity for multiple businesses, providing that value needed services that they need in order to run their operation.
Yep.
Which, again, would make sense, right? There's not every business needs a full-time CFO. They just need somebody to steer the ship, as it were, and coordinate all the moving pieces. Because like you said with your example, for any small business, there are all kinds of players, but is there anybody actually quarterbacking all the players so they're all singing from the same sheet of music or all pulling the same direction downfield?
Exactly.
Gotcha. So now, David, how long have you been involved in this industry, or at least with this idea of helping individuals just from a CFO standpoint?
I've been in the real estate investing industry for about 10 years. And I tell people, because they hear when I started Simple CFO was only a couple years ago, I'm like, well, I was building the business before then too. Like, I was able to see the hurts, the heartaches, what kept them up at night with their finances. And honestly, I just saw a huge need for someone to be an advocate for real estate investors, specifically to be like, hey, we need to help them from their financial point of view, just get the basic solid financial footing foundations around them to be able to grow and not stay up at night. Like, we've had so many clients come to us and say that's one of the main reasons they're up at night. They're worrying about their money. They're worried about that cash flow. They're worried about like the next deal they're going to do. So that's where for the last couple of years, we've been on a mission to help those real estate investors know where their money's going and give them the tools and the principles to live by in order to help them grow profitably.
Gotcha. So you've been in real estate 10 years, and that's where your passion is, to help the real estate investors just from your own past personal experiences.
Yep, exactly.
Gotcha. How about you, Michael? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you came to know David and be of service to him.
Thanks, Wade. Appreciate it. Yeah, David and I formed a relationship back in December. I have a background, primarily I was, as you well know, Wade and I have known each other for quite a few years from an IBC perspective. And I went from being a full-time IBC practitioner and financial advisor. I realized several years ago that my real passion was coaching entrepreneurs. And the vast majority of my clients were, in fact, entrepreneurs. And lo and behold, I came across what is now the foundation of Simple CFO, as well as my own private practice, and that is profit first. And the reason I mention that is because it's a newfound passion from which I can grow the gifts that I have, and that is communicating to entrepreneurs how to not only help them create health in their business, but also create the owner's benefit that business should be providing for them. And so lo and behold, and I do that in my own practice for entrepreneurs of a variety of different industries, but my very best IBC clients happen to be real estate investors. And when David reached out to our organization at Profit First, looking for some help, I realized that this was my opportunity to help David, as well as get to know the real estate investing world a little bit better. And boy, it's been a great partnership, I believe. So.
Oh, yes. I would 100% agree with that. Michael has been a huge help in our business. He serves as our CFO. And I think what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So we have a CFO for our company and make sure that we stay on track. And honestly, as an owner too, it is great to have someone from the financial aspect say, that is nuts, or no, that is really good. Like, we should pursue this. And like, to be able to have that sound advice coming from someone else, there's nothing like it. And usually you don't really get that a lot from the financial aspect unless you hire someone specifically for that. So it's been amazing.
So, well, David and Michael, both of you, I guess this would go back to the idea that Nelson Nash's book, he talked about the cost of acquisition, which means just what are you spending in order to either do it yourself or hire somebody to do it? So Michael or David, that's where I would see there's a lot of resemblance about what I do with IBC, is the fact that I hire the professionals to do the professional jobs. And that's where you guys step in. You're taking a third-party view of something and giving sage advice to people that are looking for advice, because, again, we can convince ourselves of almost anything given long enough sitting in a quiet room.
Yeah, I can add to that a little bit, Wade. When David was speaking about what we do for our clients, what came to my mind really is, that a lot of entrepreneurs know that they need to work on their business at least as much, if not more, than they work in their business. But it's something that, in my experience, and you can't see me now, you can only hear me, but I got a lot of gray hair that can show that I understand. I worked with a lot of entrepreneurs that just don't have the time or the desire to work on their business. And what we really do is provide a full-time effort of working on the business as opposed to in the business. So an entrepreneur can have that peace of mind of knowing that even if they're not finding the time to work on their business, someone has their thumb on that priority and is really focused in on working on the health and growth of that business.
That's a great point, Michael, is that we talk about it. A lot of people talk about working on your business, but it is exhausting to work on your business, and you think that you're losing out because you're not in your business actually generating revenue. But there's an old saying that more money can be had by stopping the losses than by making more money.
Yeah.
Said. Mm-hmm.
So thanks. And like I said, up until maybe a couple of years ago, until when Michael introduced this idea, I hadn't really put together that there are people out there, organizations out there that I think, Michael, you made the point that you're working full time, maybe not full time for each individual business, but it's a full time person in your business working on the financial aspect of the business for clients.
Yeah, and what I mean is it's fits and starts for most entrepreneurs. They realize, so at tax time, they talk to their accountant and they might see some good things and they might see some less than good things, but they get a feel for it. Other entrepreneurs utilize their books primarily for the purposes of understanding what their tax ramifications will be and have a loose sense of their books being a scorecard, meaning just looking in the rearview mirrors to see where they've come. What we teach entrepreneurs to do is really to use the data that they create to make that data as simple to read as I like to say books are for reading purposes, right? And that's no different between a storybook and a financial book. And we like to make our clients' storybook of their financial life read like a children's book, not like a medical journal that no one can understand. And mostly use that information to take action with and to strategize with and or take action with. So it's to have somebody whose sole focus is that within a business is a luxury that for most, it's you have to be a fairly large business to have somebody whose entire focus is just on the financial well-being of that business. By being fractional, it allows smaller and even startup businesses. We have models for a lot of different size businesses that works with the appropriate budget for an expenditure like this for our clients so that they're spending the right amount of money to have the right amount of focus.
And I would totally agree with that too, because there's so many times that real estate investors, they need that side of things, but they don't even know it's available, or because real estate investors can make money very quickly. And if they don't have someone working on that side of the business, it's very easy to get stuck into the rat race, like just Robert Kiyosaki and everyone says. The rat race that W-2 employees can find themselves in. It's the same thing with entrepreneurs too. Only I feel like the rat race in the real estate investor world or the entrepreneur world is even worse. Like you get tied to something and you're like, oh my gosh, what have I created? And then if you don't have someone looking over your shoulder to say, hey, what if we looked at from this angle? Or here's something that you haven't considered before, or here's what the numbers are telling you. We got to own up to this. So I love what Michael said, because that's what he's provided for us as well too, like for my business and then for the businesses that we work with and the clients. And it's a good feeling for the client, for someone to be there to back them up and to have their back from that aspect, when most people would rather jump through a window than dive into their own finances. So that's why we do that, to be able to say, here's what we need to talk about and what you need to learn in order to get where you want to go. Because it's definitely a learning journey for the client as well, too.
Yeah. Education and learning is always a process, never an event. David, thanks for helping me understand what the fractional. Now, CFO is. You've mentioned a couple of times that you primarily focus on real estate investors. In your company, if you want to provide the website for your company or how they would do more research on you, David?
Sure. simplecfosolutions.com. So that's simplecfosolutions.com. And you can apply there, or you can just see what our services are and what a fractional CFO does for real estate investors. And yes, I work with real estate investors because that's my background. I know how to speak real estate investor, how to communicate that to our team and with the clients and make it simple. That's why I named it Simple CFO, because I'm a simple person. I have to boil it down to how I can understand it. So I want to do that for others.
And tell me a little bit about what the values are for Simple CFO. I mean, what do you strive for every day, or what's your mission statement at Simple CFO?
We really are big on we want to transform real estate investors' lives so they can utilize money in order to get closer to their purpose. Like, we want that money to just be that tool and not be an obstacle for them to get to where they want to be. And like, we have our set of core values that we have in Simple CFO, and we want to exceed expectations. We take extreme ownership, extreme openness. We want it to be open with each other on the team, open with the clients, making sure they know where they stand. And then service above self, that was one that Michael helped us contribute to. And that's where we want to make sure that we don't ever sell a product because it benefits us. And that's the only consideration. We have to make sure, is this the best thing for them? Is this what they need? Is this the processes, the systems, everything that we've built our pillars on have gone through intense scrutiny of, is this what we want to do? And is this the best way to get them where they want to go? So that's what guides us every single day, and really making sure that they know they have someone here that has their best interests at heart.
So, David, you mentioned that you primarily or solely focus on working with real estate investors. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yep. That's my background, and that's who I have a burden for and want to really help them transform their real estate investing businesses.
Gotcha. And if they're not real estate investors, I have clients that are from all different backgrounds. Michael, is there something that you could provide, or is that something you guys still do?
Yeah, so I do contract with David and serve, as he mentioned, as his CFO, as well as I train most all of our other CFOs. But outside of the real estate industry, I own a company called Profit Max Professionals. I do provide a variety of levels of service, including full CFO services for a variety of clients and a variety of different industries. It's one of the things I love about working on businesses is I get to learn really the cash flow patterns of a variety of businesses. But the good news is, whether it's a lemonade stand, a real estate investor, a dental group, regardless, what I found is there's so many similarities that go to the art of cash flow management, which is really at the core of what we do, helping entrepreneurs manage their cash flow. And there's so many similarities that learning those individual nuances of individual industries, including real estate investors, has been a real fun thing to do, because it's a similar story with a little different wrapper on most of the clients that I work with. So little variety never hurt, but like I say, with David, it's primarily real estate investors.
Gotcha. And that in your company, just so the listeners know, how would they look that up if they're not a real estate investor?
Sure. Yeah. Profit Max Professionals. I'm sorry. ProfitMaxPros.com is the name of the website. So ProfitMaxPros.com, and our business is Profit Max Professionals.
Profit Max Professionals. Thank you for that. Now, Michael and David, you guys introduced me to a book called Profit First. Maybe give the listeners a Reader's Digest version of what that is and how that really fits into the business that you guys are in.
Sure. So Profit First, I would say foremost, is a mentality. It's a habit, and it's the formula. We've all heard the formula: sales minus expenses equals profit. So meaning you make a sale, you pay everyone else and your mother, and then what's left over at the end of the year or the quarter or whatever is hopefully you have something to take home. That's where I was saying so many entrepreneurs follow the same mindset. Even though they've come out of the W-2 jobs, they still are following the herd when it comes to their finances. And it's like the real formula, the profit first formula that they need to be thinking of is sales minus profit equals expenses, meaning I make a sale, I take my profit first, and then what's left over is what I have to pay the business expenses. And it sounds different than like what you may have heard before in the past, but it's all about that mindset and maximizing the benefits of that business to the owner, of making sure that you are thinking about being in business long term and getting the real benefits from that business of why you started that business. And so it's making profit a habit and not an event from every single decision that you make in the business, making sure that it aligns with your values and making sure that it aligns with, will this at the end of the day make sure that our company stays in business and I get the maximum benefits from the business. So that's like the mindset behind it. There's practical steps behind it too. And the practical steps, if you don't mind me going into that just a little bit, is on actually setting up physical bank accounts for maximizing the owner's benefit. And I am a huge nerd, and I get that. If you saw me or my picture, you would totally understand. So I love like epic movie sagas, Harry Potter or Star Wars, or those big ones that have the three main characters like Luke, Han, and Leia, and Ron, Harry, and Hermione, and stuff like that. And you need three main heroes in your business. You need three bank accounts that are for your benefit all the time. Number one is a profit account. Number one, the very first one, a profit account dedicated to the profitability of your company. Number two, owner's compensation. And then number three, owner's tax, making sure you are taken care of. And that's where you've heard all the adages and the cliches, what you focus on expands. So many people just start their business, open up a checking account for their operating expenses, and never once think about their profit. It doesn't even enter their mind. They're always thinking, how can I pay the next bill? How can I do the next thing? This is putting into practice the mentality that I just talked about, is setting up those accounts for you and then transferring a percentage of all your income into those accounts and taking your profit first and transferring them first before you get paid for expenses.
Gotcha. Yeah, you said what you're concentrating on grows. So most people will open an expense a checking account to take care of expenses. And the only thing that really ever grows is the expenses. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Exactly. That keeps growing. And then if you've got one bank account for everything that you're doing, you have no idea what's profit or what's taxes or what you should be paid, or especially in the real estate world. Oh man, they get money from other people, like to purchase property. So and if they just have one account, it all goes into this one big melting pot. And it's okay, what's mine versus what's other people's. So not having a system for that is very detrimental to the business owner and doesn't have them focusing on the right thing.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you for that. Michael, anything to add to that?
David said it. The primary goal of Profit First of All is it is a cash flow methodology. So some of the biggest struggles that we have are helping people and their advisors, mainly their accountants, get out of the process of using GAAP accounting to really manage the business. Although our services tie that cash flow management into the GAAP accounting. But the foundation that we've built our business around is really about understanding how to effectively and simply manage cash flow. And when I say that, having the right amount of money in the right bucket and having rules around those buckets that we then spend money out of. Okay. When people do that, literally, and it's not a theory, it's math, okay? When people do that, I get to use my favorite four-letter word a lot in my business. We use math to determine the success of where you want to be. So if you can use the hard and fast concept of math to actually choose to be successful or choose to be profitable, we found a huge amount of success in virtually 100% of our clients that follow our teachings and follow the process that we've created for them. It's not a newfangled concept. Really, if you can combine two basic concepts, right? Robert Kiyosaki, in his work, speaking of real estate investors, made famous most recently, although it's been around for a while, the concept of paying yourself first. If you can combine the concept of paying yourself first, learning to run your business on what's left over, and the other concept that's been around for many years is the concept of grandma's envelopes. Meaning that grandma had 5 envelopes, right? Grandpa brought home the money. Grandma put it in the envelopes. She had a rent envelope and a food envelope and a couple other envelopes. And there would never be in a million years the chance that she would take money out of the rent envelope to buy food with. She would use discipline and her creativity and her ingenuity to make sure that food envelope lasted until Grandpa brought that next paycheck. So that is, in a nutshell, the simple yet not easy concept that we bring to the business world. And it has been a real joy to see the lights come on when people realize actually how simple it can be. I want to stress simple but not easy. David alluded to the fact that this is mostly about behavior. Okay, there's a lot of CFO services out there that do function and build themselves around their expertise in numbers, and we certainly bring that to the table. But really, the difference in what we provide is we have a behavioral-based methodology that delves very deeply into the actual behavior that the entrepreneurs have learned and implemented and have perhaps even caused challenges in their own lives as a result of that behavior. So we're equally passionate about the technical and math portion of what we do as we are about the psychological, emotional, and of course, behavioral aspect of what we do as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, it is. It is rather interesting when people, was it Nightingale that said you are what you think, or something along that lines. I always kind of mess up that quote, but how we think is just as important, right? So if we're thinking about the wrong things on a continuous basis, we'll get that wrong result or that negative result, and thinking that there's no better way to do it, right? So you guys bring up just a different ideas, like change our way of thinking, put out what's most important out front, and then ultimately, then what you really want, which is profit. The reason why you went into business for yourself or start your own business was to end up with profit to start with, right?
Yeah, and again, you nailed it. Most people do think it's what is left over is profit.
Right.
We always say, listen, what is left over is what you have to run your business on, not your profit, because you've taken it first. You've put it aside for yourself. So yes, I 100% agree. We take some of those concepts and flip them on their head and just provide a different way of thinking about it.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And again, thank you for what you guys are doing, because that's, to me, it is a service that is vitally needed in order to keep, especially small business and entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs, like most of us understand, are very good at the thing that they're going to go into business for. But a lot of them will sit and look at the books and how to figure out profitability and how to figure out cash flow, and then go, I'll worry about that later when I start to have cash flow. Unfortunately, they never get to that point. So thank you for what you guys do.
Thank you. Yeah, for bringing that to light.
You bet. So I know we're up against a time crunch, but I wanted to talk a little bit about, again, you guys laid out really nicely what you guys do, and then you understand where, and actually both of you now are IBC certified. How does what you guys do fit in with the mindset and what people do that around the infinite banking concept? Maybe I'll have you take a run at David, and have you, Michael, do the same, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay. So what we just talked about, the profit first mentality, the whole behavior drivers and everything there, that's why we love profit first with infinite banking. Because infinite banking is a process, not a product, is a way of thinking, and a way of thinking very long term too. Like, this is not something that it's, oh, you do it and you're done. This is a way of life. And I believe that about profit first, and I believe that about infinite banking. And in, like Michael was saying, it's like grandma's envelope system, where the profit first is, to where we start building reserves for the clients that we work with, but those reserves can easily be the infinite banking policies that they start to build and start to gain the momentum there and start using that. Especially, I love it in real estate too, because they can invest in things that have incredible ROIs. And I know in real estate investing, they're always getting the rental property or a wholesale deal or a fix and flip. So they've got opportunities that afford to them to utilize that cash to do something very incredible with. And I just think the two go so hand in hand, because we're teaching them. We don't even teach anyone the infinite banking until they have been with our company and they understand that we're teaching them a process, and that we're teaching them like a way of thinking, just like with profit first as well too. We want to make sure they have the discipline in profit first, and the discipline to make sure that they have the cash that they need when they need it, and also making sure that as we implement the infinite banking concept, that they understand that this is something for the long haul, and this is something to be utilized and something to take back and become their own banker. So it's just, I love the concepts together and how much the mindset is similar to both of them. It's more about the disciplines. It's more about the behavior factor, and then putting those principles and behaviors into practical effect, and how they can, and how one works so well with the other. Of, you're already with profit first separating out your money. You might as well use one of those to be a long-term wealth building solution and use it to the maximum capacity of what it's capable of doing. And that's why I think those two goes so hand in hand with what we do.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Michael?
Yeah, I think I would add to that the Profit First is implemented in a variety of different ways. And one of the things that we have done with our clients is we have taken a few of the advanced concepts and made them non-negotiable. And one of those is that each one of our clients has a reserve vault. So our reserve vault concept is that place where we're saving for a rainy day, really to supplement the operational expense when either top line revenue or goes down or unexpected expenses come. We believe that's the very first introduction to building generational wealth, is by teaching the concept of a reserve, setting aside a reserve. It dawned on me very early on when I started working with real estate investors who really ultimately required this reserve vault because of the fluctuations in their cash flow, that this was an absolute first step towards the concept of IBC. The other aspect is that we provide a owner's compensation that is focused on the current lifestyle that a owner has, and supplement that with quarterly profit distributions. The quarterly profit distributions are a perfect source for funding the extension of that reserve vault, and that is an IBC banking system for themselves. So we realized that the whole concept of learning to think long-term, as David said, but also the concept of being disciplined to save first, spend after, lends itself directly to the overall concept of IBC.
Yeah. We've had many conversations, just so the listeners know that Michael and David and I work together in certain capacities around the IBC ideas that, my passion obviously is to teach, and I love teaching people the idea of how to implement IBC. And that's one of the core tenets I have, is it does take discipline, because it's a process that done correctly creates this generational wealth, intergenerational wealth, and it really takes control of the banking function in your business and your life. And what more can an entrepreneur want than that simple idea that I'm going to take control of the financing and banking function of my life? And I think, Michael, you made the mention, you mentioned earlier too, that what you guys teach is that you help people take action. And this to me is one of those actionable items, right? So everything's fine in theory, but when we have the ability to now take that theory and put it into action and put it into play, that's where the real strength comes.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yep.
We have a couple of minutes. I appreciate you guys taking some time to do this podcast with me. I think there's some tremendous value for my listeners, hopefully for some of your listeners too, as you share this podcast. Anything else, Michael, you'd like to add before we wrap things up?
No, just a real thank you to you, Wade. You brought, in the IBC world, there are few that are as experienced and as effective in this part of what we do. And we're just really privileged to have you on our team, and to bring this opportunity for us to be on this podcast, but also just to work with us on an ongoing basis. We really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, guys. You made me blush a little bit, but I do appreciate it. I find that, again, Dave, we talked about your values, and Michael, we all share the same values, but finding the right people, the people that are willing to embrace the idea of what you guys are trying to teach them from the profit side, the profit first side, and what we teach with IBC. It is just really a hand in glove kind of relationship. And I find that I gained a tremendous amount of energy working with you too. And so I do appreciate that. And working with your clients, I'm looking forward to having more of those experiences. So thank you guys again. I appreciate what you guys do. Look forward maybe to have you on for future podcasts as well. And I know both of you have to run. So thank you for taking time to share some of these ideas with us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Wade.
Thanks Wade.
David.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael. You guys take care. If you're enjoying this podcast or know anyone else that might be interested, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and please leave a review. This will help this podcast reach and help more people by ranking higher in searches, and ultimately help more people get out of financial bondage. And don't be afraid to share this podcast with your friends and family, as we can be easily found on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.